Welcome to the Career Medis podcast, and I'm your host, Nisar Ahmed. I'm the founder and editor of the blog, careermedis.com. This podcast will be the beginning of the Expert series. The Expert series is a series of interviews with career professionals, counselors, coaches. These are usually the individuals who are very well respected, well sought out for their ideas, recommendations, advice, and tips. And throughout this series, my goal is to give the listeners the tools that you need to help grow your career. Or if you're looking for a job, you're about to break into the job market, these interviews will give you some proven and tested formulas to break into the job market. And for today's Expert Series episode, I'm interviewing Mark Anthony Dyson from the voice of jobseekers.com. Mark's blog, The Voice of Jobseekers.com, has been mentioned multiple times. It is well established, very well known career blog. Here are some of the accolades of Mark's blog. It has been included in the top 100 career blogs in 2015. It has been voted the top career website of 2016 by Career Igniter, and also been recognized as the top 40 blog for young careerists in 2016 by U-Turn. I'm including the link to the voice of jobseekers.com along with the description of this episode. So when I interviewed Mark, he shared tons of great ideas. He has a lot of wisdom, a lot of experience. So now let's listen to the interview with Mark Anthony Dyson. Hey, Mark, welcome to the
All right.
podcast.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It was great.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for joining. So I think for the benefit of the listeners, if I do an introduction of yourself, it won't do justice. So if you can help us out by introducing yourself, like who is Mark Anthony Dyson, and after that you can tell us what the voice of jobseekers.com is. So they'll help us understand. So who is Mark?
Okay, well, who's Mark? Probably my introduction would be a lot simpler than yours, but we'll do best. I'm a career consultant. I work here as a career consultant for the past 8 years. I have cut my teeth on various experiences, everything from being a consultant to a small business here. That was my first contract, to a larger contract, which ended up working with the federal government and helping them, helping a lot of them transition either to civilian life or to another military job, and also have private clients as well. So I no longer do both of those contracts. I've kind of moved on from that particular point, but now I just work with private clients and having a lot of fun. But the best part of me is that I've been married for more than 25 years to a single woman, and have two sons, both of them that are in college. My oldest is about to graduate in December, and my youngest is working for the summer before he goes back for his sophomore year. So there you have it. That's me in a nutshell. That's the best part of me.
Well, thanks for the introduction, and you're totally correct. I don't think I would have done a good job of doing your introduction. I think you summed it up very well. And before we go on, congratulations, 25 years. That's an amazing feat by itself.
Thank you.
And you're based out of Chicago, right?
Yes, I'm out of Chicago.
Yeah. Wonderful. I've been there once, and it's a beautiful city. And I was there in January this year. It's a nice city. It's very vibrant, lots of activities. Yeah. What are some of the best things that you love about Chicago?
Chicago, probably the diversity
Mm-hmm.
depending where you live in the city. I mean, there's certain parts of it is very segregated, and the other parts
Mm-hmm.
of it are a lot of fun. Most people are very familiar with downtown Chicago, Magnificent Mile, and some of the other places. I live in sort of a unique place where I live by the Dan Ryan Woods,
Mm-hmm.
which is exactly what it says. It's a woods area, but it's also it has some recreation areas. It has some trails
Mm-hmm.
areas where people can ride bikes and walk and run, and it's kind of long. But I don't live on top of it, but I definitely live like two stones throw, if you will, from there. So it could be quite fascinating. And then too is very industrial. Though Chicago's had its problems with many different facets of the city, the government, and all the things that are going on. It is quite a nice, great city where there's a lot of things going on. I also live in an area where there's a lot of shopping, and my wife loves that. So we don't have to go very often to different parts of Chicago or even upstate or downstate. A lot of the great shopping is around here, and they're starting to build some fairly prominent businesses that are known nationwide, and but also people are enjoying the fact that they're very much close by and together. So Chicago is a nice city. I think I've been here for 27 years. I've lived in other cities, including New York City, which is my original home, and my mom still lives here. So you know, um, although I love Chicago, I've met my wife here, and I've been here for that time.
Oh, that's great to hear. I mean, you're totally correct. I think anybody who's been there, including myself, has seen there is a lot of diversity, and for the people who are from other parts of the world or not come to Chicago, that's one thing to know. Of course, another thing I think you know more than me about this is the deep dish pizza. That's something everybody. Whenever I ask anyone what should I
Yes.
get in Chicago, that's what they say.
Yep. Give deep dish pizza. The best places that I know of are you may have eaten either at Uno's or Pizzeria Dewey. Those are the two places for a deep dish. Although New York has a thing called Sicilian pizza, which really it's not as deep, but it has a very thick crust, and with the right place and the right oven, the the crispy taste of the pizza of the Sicilian is glorious. So I highly recommend it if you ever go to New York.
Well, thanks for that, Mark, because myself and the people listening, I think they would. I mean, I know they came into listening to this podcast for career advice, but now you've also given them some recommendations of where to go for Chicago and New York. That's
Right,
awesome. Yeah.
right.
Um, yeah, thanks for that. So I've read your website, thevoiceofjobseekers.com. It's very highly sought out. You've been recommended by a lot of other blogs, career blogs. Um, so, and one of the things, thevoiceofjobseekers.com. Actually, you know what? Why don't you tell us a little bit about the story, how you got started there, what type of content you post? I do have some specific questions. Maybe it'll be good if you tell us a little bit more about the website
Well,
and of course your
I
podcast as well.
oh well, thank you. The voiceofjobseekers.com had started from my company, Competitive Resumes, which actually I am transitioning over. Competitive Resumes doesn't exist anymore as a company. And I've taken. I started to feel some creative differences, more or less of internal conflict of just writing about resumes and writing resumes, and I just it wasn't the best fit for me, though the business had been doing very well at that particular point. I had been the busiest that I ever had, but my interest started to look at the whole life and the whole person, and how people approach their careers. Really, they're affected by their lives and their lifestyles, much more than we actually give it credit for in the career spectrum. So I
Mm-hmm.
started the blog, and I didn't tell anyone that it was up. I don't remember even having shared it even at that particular time. I didn't make
Mm-hmm.
a big announcement that I was making it on social media or anything. I just made I just started blogging there a lot more, and suddenly a lot more people began to find it. So it became a staple in blogging, and became really, and I'm going to use a term that's often used as a bad cliche now to me, but it was more authentic than than I was writing on my other blog. And then I think there were some things that I was beginning to, some subject matters that were beginning to become very common on both themes. And so in the past couple of years, I've just concentrated on the voice of job seekers, and that's where most people have found me. That's where most people have enjoyed the content there. And, you know, uh, that's kind of how it all got started.
Yeah, wonderful. And I think the blog has done very well, right? As I mentioned, it's been mentioned year over year in a lot of the top 10, top 50 lists. You also have a podcast where you interview career professionals. One thing I noticed on your introduction in your website is, and this is something I'm hoping you can expand on, is you talk about there are three types of people that you try to help: the unemployed, the underemployed, and the third one is it underappreciated, right? Those are the
Mm-hmm.
three type of career professionals. So
Yeah.
so the unemployed, I mean, I think it is self-explanatory. They are whatever reason they're not employed and they're looking for a job. But I'm curious, what do you mean by underemployed?
Underemployed? Yeah. Well, during the crash in America, most people and around the world, people had to take jobs that they didn't necessarily train for. You talk to any MBA from 2008 to 2011, and of course, as we know, 2008 was one of the worst crashes in American history, as far as especially where employment is concerned. There were MBAs that were coming out of school, and it was pretty much when you were coming out of school at MBA, you were most certain to find jobs. But there were MBAs from Stanford and Harvard and Yale that weren't able to find jobs. So they had to take jobs that they were overqualified for, or didn't train for. So the average MBA, I think that was coming out of college at that time from like the big Ivy League universities was pretty close, if not over the six figures. Many of them were end up making $25,000, $35,000. So those are the ones that are underemployed. Those who train for jobs, and again, they weren't the only one. But just as an example, there were PhDs that had to take jobs that didn't even require an MBA or a master's. So that's what I meant by underemployed, which we still have that problem here in the U.S., and I think it is worldwide, as I've
Mm-hmm.
talked to other people who are involved in employment in the career spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
um, that people are still trying to find the right fit and the right job for the training that they've had. And we have
Mm.
a very serious problem here in America, and it's not talked about enough, where people have taken jobs that they didn't train for, and where they used to get paid, or
Mm-hmm.
used to pay of a certain amount, they're receiving 10, 15, 20, even $30,000 less than what they're used to making.
Wow. And I totally agree because I've read, I'm sure you as well, especially one group that is affected a lot is the millennial group, and that gets talked a lot, where they have the university degrees. I'm talking not only about MBAs, but different type of degrees, and they start off in a job to get started, which is totally below what their skill set. So it is a big problem, and that's the reason I brought up that question. So what would you suggest for someone like that, someone who suggest thinks they are underemployed, they could do better? Um, what would your recommendations be? Where do they get started? How do they get started?
Well, I think they're everybody's a little bit different in what they're willing to do and the way they're willing to do it. But those who are underemployed, know, often the ones that I've counseled and have helped, uh, they're often sometimes they've given up. And I think, believe it or not, it's something simplistic. You can't give up. And not only you can't give up, but there needs to be a willingness to do some things that you've never done before. Most people spend times on a job board that they've asked a few people and they've told a few people that they're unemployed, that they're dissatisfied. But there's some things I think people have to be willing to do, and one of them is if the job boards aren't working for you, is to start getting away from them and start getting to more of the networking aspect of it, and even stretch your network. How many people do you know that work in the field uh, that you're interested in? How many people do you know? Because if you don't know many, we have so many resources on social media now that are available for where you can um, get to know people who are in your field
Mm-hmm.
that can help you out with the intelligence for you to go forward and make the right connection.
Mm-hmm.
Then, I think that would be a great big deal. There's some people who are unemployed or underemployed who've never been in that field that they've trained for through school or even through other means, and but yet you didn't make connections in college. You thought that the education would be enough, and in most cases you didn't. So you now have to go and really get to know people, especially if you want to be considered respected in this field. And that's a big step for a lot of people. They feel that I really have to put myself out there. Yeah, you do. And one of the best ways is to get to know people through networking. We have LinkedIn, we have Twitter, we have all these tools now. There's almost
Mm-hmm.
no excuse. And in fact, I would even beg to say that a lot of people who are on those social networks are are there more than willing to help someone to, and I'm not saying everybody, but the people who understand it's hard and that they're willing to help and they're willing to help with any information that's given. It's up to you to find it. It's up to you to filter the ones who are really true and the ones who are really not so uh, true to your industry. But you definitely want to try
Mm-hmm.
to find those thought leaders, the people who've written the articles, people who've written the books, the people who are constantly on YouTube giving speeches or classes or workshops, or even locally. Look locally and go to those resources. But a big part of it is network. Is
Mm-hmm.
is just getting enough intel, not expecting that somebody's going to, it's not a magic wand. Nobody's just not going to wave it and there you are in a job. It takes some work, but the way if you want to quickly or make some advances in your job search much quicker, networking has to be a major component to your job search.
Well, I mean, I was writing down some of the things you mentioned. Actually, you mentioned a few things. One is networking, the importance of networking. And one is the job boards, and you're correct. Job boards are becoming very much of a last resort. And but before and I definitely want to dig into both of them. But one thing that really caught my attention was you mentioned the concept of giving up. So networking, searching for jobs, building your brand, these are all how-to things, the things that you can do. But I think the mindset is what you mentioned very briefly. And when you said give up, like for example, people accept that, you know what, this is how it is, this is how the job market is. So now we're talking about a motivation thing. And you have experience with helping a lot of these people who are underemployed, and you help them to get to the position where what they really deserve. So the people listening to this who are in the boat where they have given up or they don't have the motivation, what can they do to change that?
Motivation has to come from a lot of different reasons, but I think I've been able to narrow it down to something very simple. A lot of people have gotten their motivation from friends and other people who do well or have some kind of authority in their lives, and they want to please them. So how many stories have you heard over the last few years of, well, I became a lawyer because of my parents. I became an engineer because of my parents that were going to get engineering. Or I found this so easy to do that, I just went ahead and did real well in school, but I'm not connecting with it at all as far as getting a job. I think one thing that really keeps motivation is really finding the very sole reason why you're doing it for yourself. It has to be the only reason that really drives your motivation, that keeps your passion going. Again, I'm using passion as one of the words that is often now a cliche. But I think it is important for you to find the things that are intrinsically motivating, where it's your own reason, and you don't need any other outside factors, and you don't need any other inspiration for what fuels you. And those are the things that will exactly drive you. Now, whether you're good or not at it, that's a whole nother question. But that's something you can find out. And you'll find the motivation from a lot of different ways. Folks, it's more than just reading books. But there has to be your reason, and that fuel just keeps on burning, and that's what's driving you to be the way that you are. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with even your family. That's more of a personal thing. If you have children, if you have a family that you're supporting, that is a very legitimate way of keeping the fire keep the fires burning. But ultimately, it has to be your own. It can't be anybody else's. And that's I found that quite a bit throughout, and still find it. Where people are influenced by all these other extrinsic factors, where really it needs to be an intrinsic factor that's your own, and nobody doesn't have to even understand it, just you. Just needs to make sense to you.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And as you were saying this, I was thinking about myself, and you made a comment about engineers. It's funny, but I'm originally from India, and there is a joke that in India everybody becomes an engineer, then decides what they want to do with their lives. So right. You sort of follow the herd. You sort of follow the herd. But as I was in my final year, I picked up this book. It was from a person who was in sales and how he built a career. I don't know why I picked up that book, but that really inspired me. And I said to myself, you know what, that's what I want to become. So over the last 10 years since I've graduated, most of my time I've spent in professional selling. So whatever you just said, I know, and initially I did get a lot of resistance from the family, because it is not as glamorous initially as engineering, of course. Right. But at the same time, I don't think when you have everybody who's an engineer, I don't think engineering is glamorous anymore. So that's my argument. Right. But you're right. I pivoted and I built my own career. So what you just said really resonated with me. So
Good.
It was good. It was good to hear. It was good to hear that the thought process you put into it.
Well, I think
Uh,
again, there's I think that we're forgetting that it's people that drive our, even though people drive our abilities to to uh, to move forward with the career process. I think what keeps us people it's hard for people to motivate you when you've gone on your fifth interview in a month and nobody's called back, or that you haven't heard from anybody in 2 months when you used to hear from people all the time. I mean, we talk about, and I talk about even resilience and the respect that you've got to be willing to endure the very, very tough scrutiny at times that jobs are trying to find new ways to find the best candidate, because as you know, the skills gap is the number one reasons why employers say that they don't hire as quickly and as often, because they're not finding the talent. Um, so we're told. In that sense, and you've got to be willing to say somebody thinks you're talented. It just wasn't the last three people that you interviewed with, and thing. So you have to be willing to go through that, and also try to get some feedback when you can. Employers often aren't into giving feedback. Here in America, they're unlikely because they don't want to risk possible litigation. Um, but at the same time, you have friends, possibly, and from your network that could possibly give you feedback from what they resilient is a major attribute for you to have and put up front. And plus, it's something that employers ultimately want to see too. They want to see that you're resilient, that you're able to get through very tough situations, because those are the real things that they face on a daily basis.
yeah, that gives that's a good point on that. And now, what about the people? I mean, let's say someone listening to this is okay. You know what, Mark? I totally agree with you. I am motivated. I want to create my own career. This is what I studied. This is what I worked before. But I want to get to
Mm-hmm.
this point. So they have the motivation. They have the mindset. They believe they have seen others do it. Now you mentioned a very important word here. You mentioned skills gap, right? So let's say I'm in a
Mm-hmm.
career where I don't want to be and I want to go to this career, the skills gap. Um, so what would you recommend to people like that?
So just to kind of wrap up what you were saying, you have somebody that has transitioned to another career, but they lack the skills.
Right.
So there's several things you keep in mind. One, if you're talking about that you're already in a job and that you want to transition to another type of job, but you realize that you don't have the skills that they're asking for. So somebody transitioning to another job, you want to look for the common skills that are in both jobs, and or the common skills that could be used in both places. And there
Hmm.
might be an opportunity for you to leverage your current job to your new job. And what I mean is that a lot of the skills gaps aren't particularly, you know, something that's real technical. In some cases, they are, but a lot of them are some of the more uh, common transitional skills like oral and written communication. Um, and you could, if you need a point of reference, PayScale just came out with a study um, talking about the skills. That's one of the top two or top three skills that they reckon that they're missing. That people don't efficiently and proficiently, don't speak well enough, or communicate in a way that would be able to persuade and help their customers. And what it comes down to is that if you're in a job where you don't use those skills, try to find some common places where you can use the skills in your current situation, such as if you're a project manager trying to going from one industry to another, start see if you can get some opportunities to do some public speaking or some at least facilitative type of situations in your current job. Maybe it's doing the staff meeting or doing a group meeting, teaching them how to do something and to build on something. And within that, you're also using the minutes from that meeting to kind of design a manual for the company. So you can use those two things as an accomplishment, that you led staff meetings to target a specific area, and then that you developed a training manual. And you don't even necessarily have to do the manual yourself. You could be even the editor of that manual. But it will be a way for you to even prove that you have those speaking and writing skills, and you can show your future employers. It's much better to have a target place where you want to go as opposed to just one in general. So you could focus on the main skills that the employer desires, which that's what you want to do anyway in any particular search. But you're leveraging those particular skills. Maybe your job has some other opportunities that are outside of your department. There is absolutely nothing wrong with trying to find a way to use those particular opportunities to start to leverage that to, not just make that bullet point on your resume, but also present the employer with real hard proof that you've done those things. And, there's no telling what you might be able to do. You might be able to, let's say, audio record your presentations and put that on like SoundCloud, and then make it available and share it through your social networks and on your Facebook page. And so that people can see it. And, you can have articles there on Facebook again. So you can put an article on Facebook or use LinkedIn to publish there, put that up. SoundCloud is one of those, I think, that you can embed on LinkedIn, and it can be there for other people to hear and see, and also provide comments. Mm-hmm. And your interaction with the comments will provide great social proof for employers who want to see what you're able to do. And if you can provide some kind of, if you do them every once in a while, I would try to audio record everything that you can possibly do and put it up on SoundCloud for people to hear and see. Whether it sounds great the first time or not, that might always that you have a seamless and perfect presentation. The most important thing is that if you're able to get the messages across, and that you get the interaction that shows, and that you're answering the questions in a way that people can understand, then you are providing, proof that I have those particular skills where you're lacking, where the employer is lacking.
Wow. So pretty much, thanks for the well thought or lengthy answer, because it really, what I'm hearing is there are all these tools available with technology, and even with people around you who will be willing to help you. There is not really a lot of excuses you can make to shrink that skills gap. So it is possible. You've given us very tangible ideas. What I heard is it's not that complicated. You can simplify it. There's no excuses.
Yeah. But, it becomes complicated when people are lacking the courage. It takes a lot of courage to do something like that, because if you've never been out there before, it's nothing for me to do it. It's nothing for you to do it, because we're always putting ourselves out there, either by writing or, in this case, we're doing the audio broadcast, something that people can get on demand. And everybody has access to it. Whether you have the courage to do it, because somebody's out there going, well, I don't want to have to do all of that. But that's what employers are looking for. It's sort of, do you say to the girl or guy, they say, well, I don't want to have to take you out on a date. I don't want to have to buy you flowers. I don't want to have to be nice to you. But then, is somebody really going to want you? And that's what you want. It's a two-way street. You want them, they
Exactly.
want you. You've got to put yourself in position to do something.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that now we're talking about doing something out of the ordinary, right? And that's a nice transition to what I wanted to ask next, because the things that you're recommending is what not a lot of people think about or they do. Because yes, you're 100% correct. Regardless of motivation, courage is very important. Putting yourself out there, trying something new that has not been done by yourself or the people around you. So that takes a lot of courage. And I think you've given us examples. Even in my case, I think when you do something out of the ordinary, it is nerve-wracking. It is nervous. It takes a lot of courage. There is a risk of rejection and failure, but when you get the end result, when you get that job, or when you get recognized or noticed or get a promotion, it's all worth it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, that is a nice transition, because courage, right? And that ties into traditional job hunting, which I think for many years, even before the internet, people used to put it on job boards, newspapers. So the whole concept of job boards. The concept of job boards hasn't changed. It's now it's digital. It's more accessible. Now you have it on mobile. So that's, I think, what, even myself, when I was job hunting, I've tried it as well. And I know people who have. What are your thoughts on just focusing on job boards, and how does that affect someone's chances of success?
Well, I think the way we look at job boards now, from a year from now, is going to be slightly different. And I don't know if you've heard the recent news about Simply Hired, large job board that has spent lots and millions and millions of dollars to operate. They're going to close down. I mean,
wow,
that's a big deal in the sense, from a recruitment standpoint, that you're talking about really changing the game. And I think that as we know, most people find their opportunities from networking. They do. They find more than 50%. We've seen figures up to 80%, depending upon what the actual study is, where people find jobs through networking. They're finding through other people. And job boards aren't willing to be a part of connecting people like LinkedIn. LinkedIn is about people connecting with people. The job board aspect of it is a very small part of it. I mean, you think about it, when you go apply to a job on LinkedIn, it's going to tell you how many people applied so far. Once you see 300 people, I mean, I think to me that kind of says, I need to find another way to do it. And again, going back to courage, if you have the courage to reach out to somebody, let's say you've met in a LinkedIn group, which is a whole lot easier to do than if you saw somebody else's timeline from a distance, that you can actually, I'm trying to remember, if there's ways that you can contact people within a group that you've joined. Hopefully, you've joined several groups throughout. You can contact a person that's working where you want to work, or working in the field that you want to work, and to be able to, again, collect some intel and to find out, what the culture's like, and, not waste somebody's time. And, you should always be grateful that somebody's willing to even spend 5 minutes talking to you. That's my opinion, but it's just very important to do that. But we have the way to connect with people. So unless job boards are willing to do that, we may see more failure, because we know that the machine on automatic doesn't work very well or very often. Now, when there were a few people working back in 2000, and it was Hot Jobs and Monster and Career Builder and the others, some of them are still up. Some of them have faded into obscurity in a lot of ways. We just don't hear some of those other names anymore, not for 20 years. So, job boards on auto, we can argue how effective it is. Job boards that connect others with people, those are the ones that are going to go at least through this next the next few years with at least with some more success than the ones that don't.
It's funny you mentioned about job boards, and when I first started looking out of school for my first job, this was 10 years ago. I remember there were so many job boards out there which you would not hear today. And of course, the Simply Hired is one of the examples. Like even Monster, which used to be a giant at one point, you don't hear a lot of activity from Monster recently. But now LinkedIn has become like a single source of truth, not for networking, jobs. It's funny you mentioned LinkedIn because a couple of stories. First of all, you and I be connected to each other with each other on Twitter and then LinkedIn. So even though we are in two different cities, I'm in Toronto, you're in Chicago, we saw some synergies, we connected, we started chatting, and here we go, we're having a conversation. And that's just a classic example. And just this week, I've had two people on LinkedIn connect with me, two recruiters, and they sent out to me an email asking if I would be interested in a career in their company. So it has just changed the dynamics completely and the other way, because before they posted a job, you reach out to them. Now, if you maintain a good LinkedIn profile, you're active, you build your brand, as you mentioned, they come to you. So the dynamics is completely changed, and I find that very interesting.
Yeah. The dynamic has changed, being that now it's a job seeker market, as opposed to just a couple of years ago, it was an employer's market. But now job seekers can really dictate more of making themselves attractive for the employer. And being that there's skills gap, recruiters and employers are just betting much longer. But the less social proof you have, the less likely they're going to be interested, unless, of course, you get recommendations, which is also social proof on LinkedIn. That's a way of providing that. When other people say you're doing a great job, then that's what makes it really attractive. And I think the algorithm for LinkedIn really makes it possible for you to find it in just that alone. But I think you also have to do the other things to kind of help the transition as far as making the update. But people connect with people. Connecting with bots and machinery is although it's an easier way to connect with, hoping that something is automated enough to pick you up. It doesn't work that way anymore, especially if you have the same skill set as 300 other applicants. Then what is setting you apart? That's the question you often have to ask: is how do I stand out, and how do I make myself more marketable than the next person?
Yeah, absolutely. It's about differentiating yourself completely, right? Making yourself unique versus 1 out of 300, and then you're just lowering your chances when you're 1 out of 300. So the final thing, Mark, I wanted to ask you. I mean, you touched on networking many throughout this interview, and the final thing is, so traditional networking. This is not even 5 years ago. Not a long time ago. I've read books about it. It was all about, go to these events, go to luncheons, go to, for example, the Rotary Club, go to breakfast meetings. Now, of course, LinkedIn, as you mentioned, you've given us a lot of examples. The traditional networking, is that still valid, or is it you think LinkedIn has completely taken over?
The traditional networking is valid, and honestly, I think as far as touch per person, that it, probably a little bit more effective because when you meet somebody in real life, there's an automatic connection. You see the
Mm-hmm.
eyes, you feel the handshake. There's more of something personal. If you include where employers and recruiters are looking, then you have to throw in social networking as part of your job search strategy. And really, you really have to do both. Traditional networking works, and really, if you do that well enough, depending upon your industry, you may not need to even. I had a client that went 25 years with never ever having a resume. Never had a resume, but
Wow.
because she networked really well and that she was able to show how she was able to do her job, and she went 25 years without even having to write a resume. That is still possible, but
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, the job market is still at a point to where, you know, you're not going to have a warning of when the company is going to let you go. I mean, when we found out about Simply Hired going down publicly, the night before, they had just told their employees. So really, from the time that you can go from employed to unemployed is it's always been very quickly, but even more so now, if you haven't done those things, but you haven't leveraged some of the free tools that we have, and you could do everything without really
Mm-hmm.
any money, but it will cost you time where you don't spend money. Then we have it all there. You can just go
Mm-hmm.
from, well, I'm losing this job, but I've been active in these areas here. So therefore, you can go ahead and get started and start making those online connections offline. Start making more phone calls. Can we meet for lunch? Can I invite you for coffee? Those things are still very powerful ways. And we should never not want to do in real life networking. That is a great big part of everything that we do. And that's the way we make true connections. But, you know, a lot of people now, they feel like they have somewhere. You, People are naturally drawn to something that's pretty easy. And, online networking can be easy if you just want to do it for the thing that you do it for doing it, and it's easier for you to connect because you don't have to move anywhere. But if you really want to be an effective job seeker, you're doing both. You're going to the Rotary Club, you're giving a presentation at Toastmasters, you're meeting people through other people who know your industry personally, but you're also publishing a blog post every month on LinkedIn, or that you've done an interview on a podcast like how we're doing about something about your field that you're very good at and can be considered an expert, or that you've even taken something on your own to put on YouTube as a how-to, and that you don't see it. And if you've studied and looked at it for a while and say, hey, nobody's ever done this, who wouldn't want to look to do it? You're going to get a lot of hits because it's something nobody's seen. That's kind of hard, but you have to be vigilant and you've got to be able to put the work in. But you've got to do all that. Being a job seeker is a lot of work and it can be quite intense. But again, uh, having courage, being patient, persevering, uh, being persistent, and having the result, what I call CPR for your career. Uh, those are the things that are going to make a difference. It's got to come from inside. It's not always about technique and how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what I enjoyed about this process so far, because you didn't necessarily get you did give us some nuggets of techniques, but you did spend a lot of time talking about the mindset, the motivation, courage, persistence, and I would agree it is a lot of work. However, I
Mm,
think you would agree to this is it is worth it, right? It is a
yeah,
lot of work, but the rewards are
yeah,
the return on investment of and return on energy is much higher.
yeah. Survival. It's about survival. You betcha.
That, that, that is true. So one final question. So thanks very much for all the nuggets and all this information. Very
Sure.
valuable. I found it very valuable. Actually, I got a little inspired when I listened to the terms courage, persistence. And one of the things that I liked so far is you mentioned it is a job seeker's market. So anybody listening to this, and you have seen it from the other side where you have helped people find great careers. That's very encouraging to listen. It is a job seekers market, and that's great to hear. One final question, Mark, is uh, how do people find you? People listen to this, they enjoyed this, they want to learn more. Where can they reach you, or how can they reach you?
The nucleus of my existence online is the voiceofjobseekers.com. And
Yeah.
all when you go to the first page or really any page, all my social buttons are there. You can just tap on your favorite one that you want to connect with and connect with me there. And you can also, you know, but you can also, you know, go to the podcast, The Voice of Job Seekers, and you can connect with me there as well. Just follow the. You can still follow the social buttons that are there, but yep, that's the best place. PostJobSeekers.com.
Yeah, and I didn't mention this before. I really like the name. It's very catchy and it's easy to remember. The
Yeah,
voice of job
thanks.
seeker. If
Yeah,
I was a job seeker, I would not. I just need to listen to that once. So
yeah.
great job in choosing the name. I think it's well branded.
Thank you.
So Mark, thank you very much for all this wonderful information. Very helpful. Like I mentioned before, I enjoyed it. The people listening to this, I'm sure they would get a lot of value out of this.
Great.
Thanks for your time, and I know when this recording is during the Memorial Day weekend, so wish you a happy Memorial Day weekend.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, and you the same. And thank you very much. Love your site as well. Uh, Fantastic resources, great writing, and really enjoy sharing it on Twitter especially, but social media as well. I'll be sharing some more as well in the future.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the feedback. I appreciate that.
Sure, sure. You have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great day. Thanks, folks, for listening to the episode. I have written a summary of the things that Mark has mentioned as part of the blog post on my website. If you liked what you heard, feel free to subscribe to the Career Matters podcast on iTunes. And for more content, ideas, tips, resources, go to careermatters.com. If you enjoyed the episode and also learned something new, feel free to post a comment. And if you really loved it, definitely go ahead and share the episode on your social feed. Until next time, this is Nisar Ahmed, your host for the Career Medicine podcast.